welcome back to my channel. My name is Bree, and if you're new here, I like to talk about my own experience with budgeting as well as other personal finance topics. And in this video, I'm going to be reviewing my November spending, looking at what I budgeted versus what I actually spent during the month, including all of the Black Friday shopping that I did and anything else that kind of came up that wasn't planned for. I'm also going to be talking about any kind of wins that I had in the month of November and any changes that I'm making to my budget, and then we'll do a quick walkthrough of what my December budget looks like. All right, so let's go ahead and start with my November budget. So we're going to come over here and we're first going to look at bills. And as you can see, not too bad for the month. It looks like I hit a few of my targets. The first target that I did not hit was my electricity. I was $41 over, and that's just because I'm on an average billing plan. So I had budgeted $125 originally for the month of November. And because I'm still catching up on how high my bill was over the summer months, it's steadily been increasing each month to kind of pay off that balance. So I did up it to $145, but ultimately the actuals came in at $186. And I'm actually looking forward to, in January, this plan ending so that I can go ahead and shop around and get a new electricity provider and hopefully start bringing these costs down. The next category that I went over in was groceries by $125. And this really was just because this last month I wasn't sticking to one of my rules, which is grocery shop one time a week for $120. So I did have a few runs to Kroger and to Aldi, and all of that kind of pushed me over the edge. So a lot of this was covered through other categories, like my general category where I've got a little bit of money left over each month to help with anything like this, as well as my gas, which is the next line item. So it looks like my gas came in at about $49 this month, which was a $90 savings. So that really helped to offset some of those grocery costs. So in total, I budgeted $3,179 for the month of November for my bills, and the actuals came in at $3,242. Moving on to expenses, everything stayed pretty consistent with how I budgeted. There were a few categories where I went over. So the first one is my home goods category. And this one went over by $23.75. And that was just because this month it seemed like all of the household goods just needed to be restocked all at the same time. So that was like toilet paper, paper towels, shampoo, body wash. So it's just a month where it kind of all hit at once. So I did go a little bit over on that. The next category that is showing over is my daughter's spend by $94.76. And this is one of the changes that I made last month, where I now combine both of our budgets into one, and it's kind of like the fun and miscellaneous category. And then I release a certain amount of funds each week to cover any kind of miscellaneous costs that come up or any kind of spending that I want to do on her or myself. So she spent $7 on a really cute Christmas ornament for the tree, $25 for her gymnastics. So they did like a fall show off, and that actually was yesterday, and she did so well. I was so proud of her. She had so much fun, and it's always so cute. You get to follow them around on the gymnastics floor as they go through the different activities and show off what they've been learning in class. And then at the end, everybody gets a medal to remember the event by. So we always love signing up for these, and they're so much fun. So next is $6.36 at Miss A. And so a few weeks ago, my daughter and I drove to the halfway point that my best friend and I usually meet up at. And we'll typically do like lunch, a walk through Costco, and if we can fit more steps in, we're totally gonna go for it. And so because of the weather, we ended up going to the mall to get our steps in. And so my daughter really likes this Miss A store, which is kind of like the dollar store version of Claire's growing up. And so since she was kind of hanging out with us and I was having her get her steps in along with us, I went ahead and let her just kind of look around the store and get a couple of things. And then I spent $20 on a really cool event that my daughter's gymnastics center puts on. So what they'll do is they'll let you drop off the kids for 4 hours for $20. And you get to just drop them off and go do your own thing, usually in the evening time. And they usually do this event about once a month, so it's really cool. And so while she was doing this, I was at home watching a movie. I made an Asian-inspired rice and veggie bowl with some salmon on the side and just got to have a quiet evening to myself, so that was really nice. And then lastly, I spent $36.37 at Target, and that was just her getting some new pants and a mug. Moving on, the next category that I did go over in was my dog spend. So I typically budget $35 a month, and really that's just to kind of cover his food costs. And then I have a sinking fund in place for some of his annual expenses. So this month I did end up buying his dog food, and that was about $20. And then I went ahead and got him a replacement toy. He used to have this giant snake toy, and he absolutely loves it, and he will go wild over it. And so I'd been really wanting to replace it for some time because the old one ripped and all of the stuffing was coming out. And so while we were at the pet store, I went ahead and took a look, and they still had one in stock. So I grabbed another one, and oh my gosh, it was like the best surprise to bring home to him. It was so cute. In addition to that, he was really in need of a new dog bed, so I spent $13 at Aldi getting a new dog bed for him. And then we went ahead and splurged on getting him groomed. And then I went ahead and left a $15 tip just because the team was so kind and so sweet, so helpful. And so that total came out to $52.89, and I ended up splitting some of that cost with my boyfriend. So my portion was $32.89. The next category I went over in was my food category. So this is any kind of eating outside of the house. I typically budget $260 a month. And so this month I did go over that. And it's definitely a category that I want to start working on over the next few months so that I can really try to stick within that 260 limit. The next category that I went over in was my clothing category for $143. And so if you saw my previous video to this where I did a mid-month check-in, I kind of go into more detail about this spending, but I did kind of do like a shopping therapy session this month and found myself at JCPenney's in their Black Friday sale. And so I went ahead and picked up a few really cute items for my fall attire. And so that's where this comes in. And then the last category under expenses where I went over in is stuff I forgot to budget for. And wow, did that go over. So let's go ahead and take a look and see what happened. So in total, I went over by $1,050, and I don't put any money towards this category. So the first thing that falls into this category is Black Friday for $534. And yes, this should have absolutely been a sinking fund. I will say it's been a few years since I've participated in Black Friday, and I really did get caught up in all of the advertising and the deals and things like that out there. So unfortunately, a lot of this spend was unplanned, but we'll go ahead and break down by the transactions. So the first thing I bought was a steam mop for $184. And so I actually own a steam mop that I absolutely love. And I was looking to upgrade because there were a few things that I wanted it to do that it currently couldn't do. And so I was looking at one of those spinning ones. But one of the things that I don't love about a steam mop is the pads having to go into the wash. The ones that I use always get really dirty really fast, and I just feel like they never really get clean in the wash. So I came across this new steam mop by Shark, and so they've moved away from the reusable pad system and instead use like a self-cleaning roller. And then the other improvement that I was looking for in a steam mop was a little bit more scrubbing power than the one that I currently had. And so this new version had a little bit more scrubbing power because it has a brush that rolls. And so I saw this on sale, and this was definitely, I just so quick had to go get this. And there is also just something about having a tool that you love to get through a task that you maybe don't love. For me, I love a good Sunday reset, but in the last year, I just feel like I haven't had a really good tool when it comes to mopping. And so when I saw this pop up and it had all the improvements that I was looking for, I was so quick to get this. So that is one of the purchases that I made. The second purchase was a microphone for $210, and that was kind of an investment in these YouTube videos, and that's actually what I'm currently using right now. So hopefully it's a good investment for me. The third thing I bought for Black Friday was a hard drive for $108. It was a 1 TB SSD hard drive, and so I've been looking at these for a while, and this was $60 off from its original price listing. And so it kind of also highlighted to me that this is a great season to go ahead and upgrade those electronics if you need to, because they are typically marked down. But during this time, I also was learning a lot about the 3-2-1 backup method, which is if you have information that you want to back up, whether it's files, videos, photos, etc., you should have 3 copies of things on 2 different devices, and 1 copy should be off-site. And so as I was learning more about this, I was learning about how hard drives actually fail after a certain amount of time, which I really didn't know. So I have so much stuff that is really important to me that's currently on a single hard drive. And after learning about this, it definitely lit a fire under me, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have got to get something else in place so that I can copy all of that stuff that's important to me and have multiple copies of it. Next was $32 for an SD card, and that is also to support these videos. So in my previous video, my camera actually overheated on me and completely shut down towards the end of filming. So I was looking at what were kind of the fixes to prevent that from happening. And one of the fixes was to get a really nice SD card that has fast read and write speed capabilities. So I've gone ahead and upgraded during this time frame as well to hopefully improve that process overall. And then lastly was $300 for a TV. Now this one I feel a little guilty for. I did not need a new TV. I love my TV, but my boyfriend had been looking into specs on some of the newer TVs out in the market, and he had been eyeing one for a while that he was really into, and asked if I'd be willing to put any money towards it. And I guess just to add, this was an OLED TV that was on sale. And so we went and saw them in person, and the colors definitely looked really crisp. For me personally, I don't watch a lot of TV, but I do love movies. So for me, this was definitely a want purchase where it was like, oh, I can upgrade my movie watching experience. So I went ahead and committed about $300 to go towards the new TV purchase. And I will say the viewing experience is a lot of fun. So the next portion of the stuff that I forgot to budget for was for a kitten, and that came out to about $121. So a few weeks ago, I came into fostering a kitten, and with that, there were some costs that of course I did not budget for. And so some of those costs included a heating pad for $32, a vet visit for $21, some miscellaneous spend for $28. So this included some food, some milk replacement, and a few toys, although I don't think she's quite at the age where she's ready to play with any kitten toys. And then $27 for a different heating pad. So when I got her initially, I was running around for supplies and it was really late at night. And so I ended up going to CVS to get a heating pad, but it really wasn't made for pets. So it had things like a 2-hour shut off. And so it wasn't something that I could use long term. And that's why I replaced it with another heating pad. And then $12 at Petco for some initial supplies when I first got her. And then the last portion was Thanksgiving, and this came in at $96. And so I do have this under the stuff I forgot to budget for because I really need to put a sinking fund in place. And so this is kind of the category that is a catch-all for things that I need to start planning for in the future. Okay, so that wraps up the stuff I forgot to budget for, and we're gonna go ahead and move over to the savings side of things. So the first category that is up is my daughter's savings, and I did put the $65 aside that I budgeted for. Next is for my dog, and I ended up taking $41 out in order to cover some of the additional spending that I did this month. Then it's memberships for $127, which I did meet, as well as the college fund for $100. I ended up using the $170 that I typically put aside for vacations this month to cover some of the Black Friday spending, so that's reflected here. And then the next category is this general category, which is kind of just buffer money that's left over in the month. And so I ended up using that to cover the Black Friday purchases as well. And then the next is for birthday and Christmas. So I do $50 and $60 for those. And typically once August passes, I don't have as many birthdays that I'd have to spend money on. I will usually combine those and roll it over into the Christmas fund. So for this month, I actually had $110 go towards Christmas. And then for my auto category, I had $100 budgeted, but I ended up going ahead and using $100 to help cover some of that spending that I had in the other categories. And then lastly, $659 did go towards my 401k and my Roth IRA this month. So what's a little bit different about this month when it comes to the overspending is that I did not have enough money from my income alone to cover all of the spending that I did and even the sinking funds that I had in place. So what I wanted to do here was kind of highlight where I pulled money from other categories in order to cover the overruns. So the first would be from my auto category where I pulled out $66. The next is from my long-term savings, and it's actually the $300 that I went ahead and put towards the TV. And then I ended up emptying out my vacation fund of $234 to cover my clothes spend and some of the other overspending. And then I had $39 left over from my fun category last month, so I also used that to cover some of the clothing. And then the last item is something that I really have never done before, but I felt like this month really called for it. So since I had all of my paychecks in for my December budget, I went ahead and pulled from my future vacation, so the money that I would have put in for vacation in December, and I pulled that into November in order to balance everything out for the month. So that was all of the spending that I did in November, and there are definitely a couple of categories there that I'm going to have to create a sinking fund for in the future. So I have some money there to use, and I'm not having to rely on the current month to cover all of that overspending. So next I want to go over the November wins and changes that I've made within my budget. So the first win was a really fast win. I refinanced my auto loan for a lower rate. So when I bought my car earlier this year, I got it for a 7.5%. And so with interest rates falling as the year has gone on, I wanted to start looking around to see if I could get a better rate on my car loan. So I ended up using Capital One's refinancing feature, and I was shocked by how fast that went. And I got in at 6.5%, which isn't a huge change, but there was a reason why I felt a little bit better about that rate. And so I'm gonna kind of talk about that in my end of year review. But that felt really good to me. The process was so fast, and all I had to do was run down to my car and get the mileage and enter that information and then complete a couple of documents, and then they went and did everything else in the background with my old bank. So this was the first time I've ever refinanced anything, and the process was really simple. And so now I have a lower rate, and so I put that down as a win for the month of November. So the second win I'm super proud of, and that was negotiating my lease renewal. So at the end of October, I got the proposal for what they were going to be increasing my rent for in the coming year. And I was thinking that it would go up about $50 or so, but when they sent the paperwork over, it actually was going to go up $80. And for me, that just felt like so much money, and I just wasn't mentally prepared for that number. So I started brainstorming what were some options I could maybe do to bring that down. And I really wasn't sure if this was going to work, but I had this motto at the time where you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. So I decided to use that to carry me through and request a lower rate. And so during this research phase of trying to figure out what kind of leverage I had to kind of bring to them and negotiate that rate down, I looked at things like property taxes and what a typical rent increase was. And unfortunately, there just wasn't a lot there. For example, when it came to property taxes, it turned out that my county actually increased the property taxes this year way higher than normal just because of all the storms that have hit. And then when it came to what a typical rent increase is, I saw that it ranged from about 5 to 15%. And so when it came to the $80, that was about a 6% increase on my rent. And so after doing the research, I kind of was like, gosh, 6% isn't terrible, but I still didn't want to increase my housing by $80. So I started brainstorming what were some of the positives that I could say about me as a tenant. And I ended up writing out an email email to the leasing management team, just highlighting that I had lived here with my daughter for 5 years. We really loved the community. We were really respectful of our neighbors, especially living on the second floor. I also highlighted that I've paid my rent on time 100% for the last 5 years. And then I've actually lived in a couple of different apartment units on this property. And so I just highlighted that I always take care of my space and maintain it really well. I don't have a lot of maintenance requests that I put in throughout the year. And when I move out of a unit, I typically get most of my deposit back. And so I really hope that all of these things would highlight to them as being a really good, thoughtful tenant. And I asked that they would consider a 4.5% increase, which would equate to $60. Now, I had no idea what kind of power they had at the office or if I was really even talking to the right person. The next day they wrote back and they accepted the 4.5% that I proposed. So this was a huge win, and this just made me feel so much better when it comes into going into the new year and what that next annual budget's gonna look like. Next, I'm gonna talk about changes that I made in the month of November. And I actually made a huge change this last month. So twice a year, I get an extra paycheck, and I usually put that money straight into my emergency fund so that I can build it up, I can keep it padded. And so this month ended up being the month that I got my extra paycheck. But when it comes to getting my extra paycheck, it actually kind of throws off my schedule. So for example, the last few months, I've gotten all of my paychecks in time to cover the next month. So I've kind of been like a month ahead, and it really just puts me at ease to already have the money in place. But when it comes to these extra paychecks, in the past, I've always put them straight in my emergency fund, and then it kind of restarts the cycle. So then I have one paycheck that I'm working off of in the next month, and I have to wait about 2 weeks until I get that second paycheck for the rest of the month. And so I really kind of wanted to get out of that pattern of having to wait for the next check. And so I started looking ahead, and something that I noticed was that if I went ahead and just used this third paycheck to continue the habit of being a month ahead, I will actually get another third paycheck in May of next year, and that will be a true third paycheck where I will have June covered and an extra paycheck. And so I decided to not use my third paycheck this year to pad my emergency fund. And this was a really big change because I was looking forward to getting some extra money in there just for peace of mind. But I also feel really good about the decision I'm making, and I do like that I'll still be a month ahead, so that kind of puts me at ease. But it just means that I'm gonna have to wait until May to get a good chunk of money into my emergency fund. The next change that I made this month was linking my YNAB, or You Need a Budget app, to a few of my credit cards. So I've been using this app for 3 years now, and I've been manually entering all of my transactions. But I thought this month I would go ahead and try the automatic feature. So I linked it to 3 of my cards, and so far it's been pretty cool. I still like to manually enter transactions because there is a delay when it comes to YNAB receiving those charges from the card. But overall, I think it's really cool to get notified when I have transactions that need to be categorized. So when it comes to looking ahead, it is time for me to start thinking about my annual budget. And so I'm gonna be putting that together in the next couple weeks, and I will definitely be making a video over how that whole process goes. And with that, I'll be incorporating my new rent changes. And then also, because of the emergency fund and how I'm doing that third paycheck, I also want to start looking at how I'm funding my emergency fund on a month-to-month basis. I want to get something a little bit more consistent in there rather than waiting for these large lump sum amounts to come in. As of right now, I do get a little bit of money just because it sits in a high yield savings account. So I get interest every month, which I just tack on to the total balance. But I would like to have it set out in my plan that I'm putting a little bit more aside just so that I'm consistently saving towards it. And so the categories that I plan on looking at are my eating out category and my fun category, and just seeing if there's a little bit that I can take out of there and start putting towards that. So that's going to close out the month of November, and we're going to take a quick look at my December budget. And so in this video, I'm actually gonna show my December budget in the YNAB app, just so you can see what that looks like, but it is pretty consistent with that Excel spreadsheet that I'm using as well. So as you can see right at the top, I've got my fixed or immediate expenses, and that's gonna include rent for $1,580, my car loan for $365, electricity for $185. And so this month I've already put it at a realistic amount that I know it's gonna come in at. Next is gonna be my phone and internet for $61.55. And so it is actually December 8th today that I'm filming this. So I've had a week's worth of transactions already hit. So you can see that they're now at a $0 available balance, and that's just because the bills have already come in. Next is gonna be Apple Music for $25. And then my auto insurance for $176. And then the next category is titled student loans, but this has kind of been my buffer account for the last couple of months. And so it's currently sitting at $209. Then my Roth IRA for $80 and Adobe for $11. The next set is titled the Flexi or Quality of Life expenses, and these are more variable expenses. So I've got gymnastics for my daughter for $106, groceries for $624, which actually it looks like I've already had to add a little bit of money there. Gas for $112, my toll road fee for $20, home goods for $42.97, health for $90, stuff that I forgot to budget for $224, which is supposed to be $0. So we've already had a little bit of drama this first week, and so that will be included in next month's review. Then I have $68 for my daughter's spending, $20 for her allowance, $65 for her savings, $35 for my dog's spending, $88 for his savings. And then we'll pop on down for the just for fun area, and we've got food and drinks for $294, fun money for $270, and clothes for $27. And then lastly, when it comes to the sinking funds, I've got $127 for memberships, $100 for the 529, and then you can see the next line is the vacation line, and I would typically have $170 there, but that money has already been used on the November side. I didn't have any rollover money, so nothing under general savings. And then I've got the $50 for the birthdays and $60 for Christmas, and then $100 for maintenance. So I've talked about how I have a couple of categories that I release money to myself every week. And so I wanted to quickly show how I set those up at the beginning of the month. So we're gonna go ahead and pop over to my groceries for December. Now I have had some spending this month, so it isn't quite like a clean start, but I just wanted to kind of give an example of how I typically set this up. So every month when I started off, I will load in a specific dollar amount and label it as my budget for that category. So for example, for groceries, I set out $600. So I will put a $600 there, and then every Friday, I will decrease it by $120. What that's doing is it's making it so that my available category then shows $120, and then that's the set amount of money that I have to spend for the week. And so why I did this was for two reasons. The first being that I needed a visual cue to understand like how much money did I have to spend in a certain category. So when I release $120 or decrease that budget amount, I can then see in my budget that I have $120 available versus $600 available. The second reason that I like doing this is because then once the week kind of comes to a close and we're nearing the next week where I'm going to release more money, I can take a look at that category and I can see whether I saved some money, so maybe I still am in the green and I have available funds to spend, or I might see that I went kind of over, and so it may show like, oh, a -30 because I went over by $30. And so what that means is I have to cover that $30 with something else in my budget if I want to keep releasing $120 every week to myself. So that is how I've kind of helped myself gradually spend money throughout the month and visually see where I'm at for the month, while also making sure that I have enough money to finish out the rest of the month. And so maybe I can show that a little bit better in a later video. So if you have any questions, please let me know down in the comments. Awesome, so that's gonna wrap up this video. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today. I hope that you found some value in this video, and if you have any questions or comments, please let me know down in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking, and then if you'd like to see more content like this going forward, please consider subscribing. Thanks again, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye!